Thank you very much, Sally, for your wonderful presentation, and how I really enjoyed, and I think that we all did, how you took us through the different processes and how Willem de Kooning started with the representation of the human figure and how little by little it starts vanishing, and all this, meditation and thinking about how the period between the two world wars changed the representations of all these artists. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our second speaker here. Roxana Velasquez has served as the Maruja Baldwin Executive Director of the San Diego Museum of Art since 2010. During the past 4 years, she has organized many high-profile exhibitions for the San Diego Museum of Art, including from El Greco to Dali, into India, South Asian paintings, in Mexico City, and currently in Quebec, The Human Beast, German Expressionism, Sorolla, and of course, Gauguin to Warhol. Prior to her appointment in 2010, she served as director of the Museo Nacional de San Carlos, Museo Nacional de Arte, and Museo del Palacio de Bellas Artes in Mexico City, where she organized the National Homage of Frida Kahlo in 2007. Roxana was recently honored by the King of Spain with the Cross of Isabel la Católica for outstanding cultural projects of Spanish art organized in Mexico City, and by the Belgian government with the prestigious decoration of the Knight of the Order of the Crown for cross-cultural relations between Belgium and Mexico. Her subject today is Frida Kahlo, the artist behind the pop icon. Help me welcome Roxana Velasquez.
Thank you so very much, Sandra, for that introduction. A little long, but thank you so much. It is my great pleasure to be now with you sharing this wonderful exhibition that we are so proud that San Diego is enjoying since almost a month ago. We have gotten a lot of incredible, people are raving about the quality of the paintings. Why get the rest if we could get the best for our city? So I will today talk about Frida Kahlo. And the reason is very, very simple. Frida Kahlo is there and was acquired, was commissioned by Conrad Goodyear, who was the president of the MoMA, Modern Museum of Art, and to observe among Kandinsky, Van Gogh, Gauguin, Rothko, Giacometti, that portrait tells a lot. And I thought it would be very, very nice to address a subject of an artist that might be maybe the most famous artist, and also try to analyze why is she so famous? What's going on here? I would like to speak about Frida today and to remind us all that to talk about Frida is to evoke a modern myth. Like all myths, it rests upon a mixture of invention and reality. There are many sources for this myth. In the first place, it was Frida who constructed a persona for herself. However, several biographies have appeared over the last few decades, which are plagued by anecdote, gossip, speculation, and full of semi-fabricated information. Nevertheless, it is apparent that certain areas of both her life and her work are still fraught by mystery. These mysteries, together with the dualities which made up her identity and which she herself had a hand in creating and recreating, have acted as further incentive of mythification. Feminist groups in the 1970s, especially in Germany and North America, were the first to turn Kahlo into an allegory, a symbol of rebellion and irreverence. Doubtless, they were equally attracted by the exotic folkloric facts of this painting that were in her appearance. Feminists saw her as an epitome of insubordinate, defiant woman, the woman that exercises her freedom as a daily challenge. A pop icon. This kind of images and several others have populated our world, invaded maybe, from tennis shoes, T-shirts, tequilas, scarves, post stamps, postcards, magnets, everywhere. Like if everybody wanted to possess a piece of one of the strongest spirits that had ever existed. But let me pose a question. Who was Frida Kahlo? And why is that she conveys this magnetic attraction that brings crowds to every exhibition that takes place around the world? Name Europe, Asia, Latin America. There's so many aspects to cover here. Frida Kahlo is one of the most complex individuals I have ever encountered in the history of art. It is so complex to touch all the aspects of her life, not only her biography. We all know, and it has been said that Frida is really not a painter. She's a biographer that uses painting as a mean. But let's try to do a fast journey over the next 30 minutes in several episodes and aspects of a life of a woman that today attracts, as I said, the minds of writers, psychiatrists, art historians, sociologists, journalists, and it would only take you a Google search to hear what I'm saying. Let's try to find an answer. Who's Frida and why is she so magnetic? Let's start from the beginning and let's try to be ordered. There are so many aspects and so many episodes that she had to live. So hanging there, because I'll be dropping a lot of information. Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo Calderón, as she was named, was born in Coyoacán on July the 6th of 1907. Even though her identification with the Mexican Revolution in 1910 was so strong that she always gave the year of her birth as 1910. Following the colonial era, the 30-year dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz, the revolution aimed to provoke fundamental changes in the country's social structure. Frida decided that she and the new Mexico were born at the same time. Her father was the German photographer, Guillermo Kahlo, and her mother, Matilde Calderón, a Mexican. Frida was the third of four daughters, Matilde, Adriana, and Cristina. Her two children, her nephew and niece, Isolda and Antonio, are always included as well in the pictures. As a child, Frida is stricken with polio, which affects her right leg. Her father was the first official photographer of the Mexican cultural heritage during the Porfiriato. Frida lived through the revolutionary epoch in her childhood. She received a traditional education which included religious doctrine. When she was very young, she wanted to study medicine and was very interested in biology, anatomy, and zoology. During her adolescence, she began to frequent leftist student organizations. This painting, my grandparents, my parents, and I, was done in 1936. The artist traces a history of her ancestry. She appears as a little girl standing in the garden of the Blue House in Coyoacán, today the Museo Frida Kahlo, in which she was born and also died. Her parents, who built this house in 1904, appear above her in a pose copied from a photograph taken on their wedding day in 1894. The artist points to her prenatal existence in the fetus. The Casa Azul, which today, as you know, is one of the most visited and touristic places in the world, and it's always and constantly sold out to get to visit in Coyoacán. The grandparents here above the father and the mother, Guillermo Kahlo, Wilhelm Kahlo, arrived to Mexico and arrived at the age of 19. He was born in Baden-Baden, Germany, and he moved to Mexico once his mother passed away. The grandparents here, the maternal grandparents, Matilde Calderón, Mexican, daughter of Spanish generals, and her grandparent as well, a photographer of Indian descent. And the right hand, the right hand for us, the grandparents here, the German, who were Jewish Hungarians that had arrived to Germany and who were jewelry and a worship, very, very wealthy European and very well-respected characters. So having finished the primary education at the Colegio Alemán in Mexico, the German school, in 1922, Frida enters the Escuela Nacional Preparatoria. She joins a group of young people called Los Cachuchas, of which she was the only female member. Alejandro Gómez Arias, her first love, also belongs to this group. She watches Diego Rivera paint a mural, The Creation, in the amphitheater of the National Preparatory School, and in 1925 she attends the engraving workshop of Fernando Fernández. The accident. One cannot talk about Frida Kahlo without mentioning the accident, and I know because of the fact that there have been so many films and documentaries, starting with Salma Hayek of the lately years, we are all very well aware and maybe very informed about the accident. But it happened in 1926. She suffers a serious accident which would completely change her life. The bus in which she was returning home, accompanied by Gómez Arias, her first love, collides with a tram. Frida suffers multiple injuries, leading the doctors to doubt whether she would survive the next day. During her long and painful convalescence, she begins to paint, and the accident left her confined to a bed for 3 months. She spent 1 month in a hospital. After she seemed to be fully recovered, she began to suffer frequent pain in her spine, and her right foot also felt permanently tired. Eventually, she was ready to leave the hospital. Her spine had not actually been x-rayed at the time of the original accident, and only now was discovered that a number of vertebrae were displaced. For the next 9 months, she had to wear a succession of plaster corsets, as seen in the photo, and she describes these feelings in numerous letters to Alejandro Gómez Arias. These are images that you might have seen several times, but it's always breathtaking to see how she not only had to be trapped in corsets, but she was decorating and painting and using her own self as a means of communicating. Alejandro Gómez Arias, his first love, as we know, was with her the moment of the accident, but was not injured in the same accident. We have all the information of these first stages of her emotions through the numerous letters that she writes to Gómez Arias, where she's describing, what am I going to do? I am trapped in this bed. I am so young. I think there's a lot that I have to do. I am not ready to die yet. So this portrait in a velvet dress of 1926 is the first serious work in Frida's career. It was painted as a gift for her boyfriend, Alejandro Gómez Arias, who had left her after the accident, whom she thereby hoped to return, to recover. The aristocratic pose reflects Frida's interest in the painting of the Italian Renaissance, while the mannerist elongation of the neck recalls both works from the Modigliani and the Parmigianino. The elegant velvet dress with its exquisite brocade and a simple cotton blouse, the gloomy Art Nouveau. It is a very intriguing portrait. And remember the date, 1926, when it was executed. At this time also Frida is already painting drawings related to the accident, some watercolors. It's during these months when she begins to paint as means of escaping of the boredom and pain. Quoting Frida, I felt I still had enough energy. My life was just starting. I need to do something. Her father gave her palettes, brushes, and you might already know, and her mother brought a special easel where she could paint in the position, reclined position that she had to be trapped. The bed was also given a canopy with a mirror covering its entire underside so that Frida could see herself and her own model. This moment saw the start of self-portraits which dominate Frida Kahlo's oeuvre and which provide a source to follow her career development. Quoting Frida, "I paint myself because I am so often alone and because it's the subject I know the best." Her words contain key to the most striking characteristics of her paintings. In the majority of her full-length self-portraits, the artist portrays herself against a backdrop of vast, bare landscapes of empty, cold rooms, reflecting her constant loneliness. This same sense of solitude pervades her head and half-length portraits too. When one looks at all these thousands of portraits and images that invades our life, one thinks, what was going on there? Why is this narcissism? Maybe, probably, she's been accused about narcissism many times. And of course, there's a piece of that. We will not deny that piece, but what was going on in that room of loneliness where she was contemplating herself all the time? Diego and Frida. Quoting Frida, she said, "There are two accidents in my life that definitely transformed me. The first one, of course, the trolley, the tram accident. The second one, you, Diego. You are my worst accident." It was through Tina Modotti that Frida Kahlo met Rivera. She had already seen Rivera once before at the Escuela Nacional Preparatoria, where he had painted his first mural in the school Simón Bolívar Amphitheater in 1922. That's the important The Creation mural, which is the first mural of Diego Rivera. She now went to see the artist in the Ministry of Public Education, where he had been working in this mural since 1923. She greatly admired both, the man and his painting, and wanted to ask him what he thought of his own efforts, of her own efforts, and whether would he consider her talented. Rivera was immediately impressed by the works she showed him, and I'm quoting Rivera now. "They are full of expression, precise delineation of character, and true severity. They had a fundamental plastic honesty and an artistic personality of their own. They communicated a vital sensuality, complemented by a merciless yet sensitive power of observation. It was obvious to me," says Rivera, "this girl, this tiny girl, was an authentic artist." He therefore incorporated her image in his mural, Ballad of the Revolution, at the Ministry of Public Education that he was working at the time. That's the Ministry of Education, and Frida is incorporated at the moment when they just met. He was absolutely impressed with the works of art, and Diego was not an easy character to convince. Frida and Diego. This might be the most famous double portrait of Frida and Diego, and it was done in 1931 in the United States when they arrived to San Francisco for the first commission of Diego in California. In 1929, Frida marries Diego on August 21st for the first time. You might already know that they married twice. This double portrait had been based on a wedding photograph. The difference in height appears exaggerated, but was in fact the real case. Frida's feet barely touch the ground. She appears instead to float beside her corpulent husband, whose big feet are planted firmly on the ground. Rivera is identified as an artist by his palette and brushes. She presents herself as a wife of a brilliant painter. She gave this picture to the art collector Albert Bender, art collector who was in San Francisco, in gratitude for the U.S. visa that he was able to organize on behalf of Diego Rivera, who had serious trouble coming to the United States because of his liaison to the Communist Party at those days. Frida used to say when she saw this painting, I know and everybody knows, it's no secret that between Diego and I, there are 20 years of difference, 20 kilograms of difference, and 20 centimeters of difference. So why hide that? In spite of the fact that the relation between Diego and Frida was a conflictive, tortuous, and even tempestuous one, their love story is one of the most memorable and passionate ones that had inspired a lot of books and writings. The letters among those two convey this admiration and ultimate respect, intellectual respect among both. Rivera was already a very famous muralist when they met, at a time when double standards were the norm. What was allowed for men was forbidden for women. He loved his freedom and his art above else. She loved him. An artistic expression for her came second. Frida's marriages to the artistic genius Diego Rivera doubtless has fed this myth. In 1930, Frida suffers her first abortion. Frida and Diego travel to San Francisco, where Diego executes 3 murals. Frida meets Dr. Leo Eloeser, who would become her close friend. She paints his portrait and visits museums and art galleries. Frida begins to wear, at this time, the Mexican special Teguana clothes. Diego convinces her that she must be wearing these clothes, and this is going to be another duality that we will see through her life. In 1932, Frida travels to Philadelphia and to Detroit, where Rivera paints the interior walls of Detroit Art Institute. In July, she had a second abortion in the Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, which obviously produced a very famous painting of the Henry Ford Hospital that we will see later. The terrible experience is portrayed in several works, a lithograph titled The Abortion, and 2 more paintings named The Cesarean. She also executes so dramatic paintings like My Birth in that year. And the image that we will see now, named Portrait on the Borderline Between Mexico and the United States. There is a constant traveling between the United States and Mexico. They go back and forth for family reasons, for exhibitions, so there's a constant duality in the brain of Frida. In this painting of 1932, Frida makes clear her ambivalent feelings towards Gringolandia, the way she used to call, in a funny way, the United States. In an elegant pink dress and with a Mexican flag in her hands, she stands like a statue on a pedestal between 2 different worlds. On one side, the ancient Mexican landscape, governed by the forces of natural life cycle. And on the other side, she represents the cold machines, industrial technology, dominating her landscape in North America. In 1933, Diego and Frida moved to New York City, Rivera having been invited to paint the mural in the Rockefeller Center. And in December, again, back and forth to Mexico. 1934, another abort comes, the 3rd abort, and Diego is having an affair with Frida Kahlo's sister, Cristina. Frida Kahlo travels to New York City at the time without Diego Rivera to have her right foot operated. Frida travels to Tampico in 1937 on January 9th to receive Leon Trotsky and his wife, who will still stay in the house of Coyoacán. There's a lot of historical aspects here that we just have to drop, and forgive me, hang with me. Trotsky's connection. Frida makes a portrait to Trotsky. Frida is she cannot believe that Diego Rivera has gone with her sister, the favorite sister, and she is decided to, of course, take revenge. And there she goes. Trotsky was absolutely fascinated by the brain of Frida. It was so, we will see her big relation happening at the house of Cristina, and using Cristina's house to go from the intellectual, emotional admiration to the real sexual and physical one. In 1934, Frida Kahlo has also a romantic relation, 1938, with the very famous photographer Nicholas Murray, whom she had met years before. She receives an invitation at that time for an individual showing at the Julian Levy Gallery in New York. She travels in October to attend the opening of her first individual showing. This is the painting that, of course, we have right now in the exhibition. As I said, a very important painting that was commissioned by Mr. Conrad Goodyear, the brain that also acquired and commissioned most of the paintings that we have currently in the Albright-Knox exhibition show. He was absolutely seduced by the fact that Frida was portraying herself with a monkey and other animals. Frida was such a lonely creature that she definitely wanted to be accompanied by these pets. And the monkeys, even though in many, many cultures and many symbolic and iconographic elements, like during the Middle Age times or even the Renaissance, the monkeys represented the devil, the lust, and they are associated with evil connotations. In the world of the pre-Columbian mythology, where Frida was absolutely keen, the monkey represents the opposite, the warmth, the caress, the tenderness, and she considered those monkeys to be like her teddy bears, in a way. So the monkey called the attention, and of course he's surrounding her wonderful neck, and there she appears with this big isolation and confronting us who are contemplating this 1938. He wanted to have the painting named Fu Langshang and I, but that was already sold in the exhibition of Julian Levy's gallery. That painting was given, already was acquired by Shapiro, the sister of the art historian Mayer Shapiro. So she made a replica of that painting with certain variations. It's not exactly the one. And she did this painting at her room in New York at the hotel because she was absolutely thrilled that Mr. Goodyear wanted to have the painting. So, André Breton, as you very well know, is considered the founder of Surrealism. And he went to Mexico with his wife, Jacqueline Lamba. They arrived to Mexico City, and they also stayed in the house of Diego and Frida in the south in San Angel. Breton was absolutely enchanted with Frida's paintings. André Breton, as I said, is one of the biggest theorists of art who wrote about Surrealism. And when he saw the paintings by Frida, said, this is a real surrealist artist, which of course, with the character that Frida had, she was pissed. She said, isn't this a brilliant intellectual man? How dare he would tell that I am a surrealist? If I understand well, Diego, surrealists are those that paint their dreams, their fantasies. I have never painted a dream. I am just portraying my life. So therefore, I am not a surrealist. And of course, Breton was absolutely at that time seduced by her argument. There she is in the exhibition of Surrealism in Paris, the most important Surrealist exhibition that took place again, and she appears together and has great relations with, of course, Dali and Kandinsky and a lot of the most important artists. Again, in 1938, it's the same time when she's having in the United States the only solo exhibition in New York, Julian Levy's gallery. 1939, this exhibition, and then 1939 as well, the exhibition in Mexico. She had worked so intensely the past 2 years in order to create an exhibition for herself, but she quotes in a very humble way. To my surprise, I'm quoting her, to my surprise, Julian Levy wrote me a letter saying that somebody talked to him about my paintings and that he was very much interested in having an exhibition in New York. I answered, sending him some photographs of my last things, and he sent another letter very enthusiastic and asked me if I would do an exhibition of 30 paintings. I really don't know. What does he want to see in my work? Why would they want to have a show? This tells us immediately that Frida, even though she has made a lot of progress in her works, she considers still an inferior artist, a mediocre artist, as a painter. And here, through this very quick talk, we will see that he was not only a painter. She has so many other aspects that are fascinating. But she was at this point still in time, even though she's part of the Surrealist exhibition in Paris and the big Surrealist exhibition that took place in Mexico. And Breton is there, and Dali is there, and Tanguy, and Picasso. And everybody is fascinated by her. She was not convinced. She thought Diego was the great artist. So there we go with a painting that when Frida says she's not Surrealist, it's... We should not believe everything that Frida says, right? But there you go, the big exhibition, and one of the most fascinating and intriguing paintings, What Water Has Given Me, right? There's a lot of elements that were intriguing here, and she keeps using elements of other paintings from El Bosco, Hieronymus Bosch, The Garden of Delights, to the paintings called Memoir, or to the paintings of several others that keep repeating several aspects of her life. What Water Gave Me is a symbolic work illustrating various events. Several images combined here, and whatever Frida said, I can assure this is a Surrealist painting, definitely. Let's go to the most famous painting, maybe the one that everybody recognizes. And let me assure you, this painting, even though sometimes that frequency of images has wasted our passion, when you're in front of the physical painting, the huge size, different from the rest of the very, very small self-portraits, it's just impressive. I hope many of you have seen this painting. This painting has been exhibited all over the world, and I can tell you it's the most requested painting in the history of art, of Mexican art, which is 30 centuries of history, of creation. It's not a small thing. But this painting now, recently, was supposed to be considered no trouble anymore. It was like just forbidden, because it has not stopped in Mexico, and Mexicans are furious that they cannot have that at the Modern Museum of Art, because all the world is requesting it. Of course, you know the story. This is after the divorce. After the divorce with Diego, she thinks she has been fragmented. There are two Fridas there. We call this painting erroneously the two Fridas, las dos Fridas. The real thing, the real name she had put to this work was Me Twice. Frida dos veces. That's the real original name. And there we have the duality that we were always talking about, the Mexican wearing those customs of the Tehuana region, very strong woman, and the Victorian style one in the left. in my left. I hope it's your left as well. And the connection among both. And of course, the love that she had for Diego Rivera, where she's carrying the miniature portrait of Diego in her hand, with her hand. She's bleeding, she's about to die, but she's alive. And the painting, what she said, is this incredible sky behind her. The sky is a tortuous sky, and it reminds us, in a way, those Greco that she admired so much, those Greco skies in those torturous scenes of the 16th century. The last time I think this painting traveled was to the exhibition named Wonderland here in LACMA in California that I hope you saw. And it was allowed to travel for that show. Maybe it was 3-4 years ago. So let's move to very fast to other aspects of Frida Kahlo, the writer. The writer was an aspect that recently started to be revisited by Raquel Tibol, one of the biggest most knowledgeable persons about Frida Kahlo. There's a lot about the writings, the letters, the quotes, how many exchanges and how many comments she did, not only about her life, her diary. There are so many quotes. I will not annoy you with those, but they are incredible, and I recommend you to go and read her quotes. Some are so witty and so intelligent, but others are in the means of the automatic writings of the surrealists. I will just tell you two. Well, one I already said, The Accident, which I love. Diego, you are my worst accident. But the other one is about the tears. She was drunk most of the time, because she was in pain and she was having painkillers. But she said, I drink because I want to drown my tears. I drink to drown my tears, but those stupid tears have already learned how to swim. And there you go. There are like several quotes relating whatever you think. Intellectuals, Paris, the United States, how's the difference between cocktails and tequilas? Why drink cocktails if we can drink tequila? It's a lot of elaborated letters, which I keenly invite you to go. You're going to have a great time doing that. Another aspect that's very fewly known is the art teacher. She had pupils at the end of her life. She had pupils that are named Los Fridos, and Fanny Ravel, Arturo Estrada, Guillermo Monroy, and Arturo García Bustos are artists in their own right, whom she taught. She was not able to teach them anymore at the Esmeralda, the National School for Drawing and Engravings, where she was named teacher at the end of her life. So they went to the house in the Casa Azul and took lessons with her. And there are lots of quotes and incredible comments about how was she in reality. This is some pages of the diary that I'm sure you have seen. It's published and it's a bestseller and it's translated, of course, in so many languages. So the acquaintances and lovers. Another of the aspects that is rarely treated or studied in depth is why was she friends with all these incredible people that were creating the story of her time? We mentioned Murray, Nicholas Murray, the photographer. We have mentioned Georgia O'Keeffe, Tina Modotti, of course Trotsky, Josephine Baker, and Dolores del Rio, the Mexican artist that was in Hollywood at the golden age of Mexican cinema, Paulette Goddard. I mean, it's endless the people whom she has been, we think she has been associated and related. It's a fascinating world. Why and how was Frida able to have all these people raving about her? Let's go and have a quick look to the paintings that Frida Kahlo did at the end of her life. Dorothy Hale, one of the most fascinating paintings, sits at the Phoenix Art Museum and in the United States, in Phoenix, in Arizona, of course. But this is one of the most intriguing and fascinating paintings. Dorothy Hale, maybe you all know, was an actress who did not have any more jobs. She turned 33, and they considered her in Hollywood to be too old to be an actress. So because of that and other things, she committed suicide, and she jumped from a building in New York. And the friend, Claire Booth Luce, the publisher of the Vanity Fair magazine, asked Frida, could you please do me a portrait of my dear friend Dorothy Hale, because I would love to give it to the mother. She should always have the daughter. you are so good with portraits. You are the best. Please make me a beautiful portrait. And Frida, that with, of course, spoke very bad English, and the other one did not speak Spanish, said, of course, I will do a recuerdo, and I will do an ex voto. And she said, and what is a recuerdo? And I said, you will love it. So there she goes, inspired with the ex votos, which are these very small, traditional 18th century votive paintings with the legend underneath saying Dorothy Hale committed suicide at the age of 33, and almost like in a film, doing this futurist. Now that we have Giacomo Balla here in the exhibition, let's see the futurist movements of the fall while it's happening. And of course, when Vanity Fair publisher sees this, she almost faints. Said, how you dare think that I'm going to send this to the mother? And of course, she wanted to destroy the painting. It's also written with blood, and Frida is shocked. She doesn't understand. She thinks this is a masterpiece. And of course, did never see the light until it came to the Phoenix Art Museum. So more, of course, the Henry Ford, this is a very famous painting. We already spoke about the first abort and miscarriage that she had 4 or 5 in the United States, while in the United States. Very, very well-known painting as well. Diego Rivera, painted in 1937 by Frida. Of course, the very famous with the cropped hair. After she discovered his relation with Cristina, she decides to do this incredible tiny painting that sits in MoMA, the broken column. Very, very famous. Again, I should not elaborate more. And then death in my brain. Thinking of that was always a subject that played with Frida. Frida couldn't care about death. She talked to her like most in the Mexican traditions. She dined, she had dinner, she had breakfast, she toasted death, and she said, come with me if you want to dance, but show me. And she was always like threatening and challenging death. But that is one of the most exquisite portraits of Frida. 1943, in her mature stage of painting, all this isolation that we spoke, but with that perfection. And this sits in a private collection in Mexico City, and it was at the homage in 2007. It's a pity that we cannot see more of this painting physically because it's monumental. And she was thinking in death, and of course, 1954, on July 2nd, she dies. 1954, at a very young age, finally, after all the tragedies and her leg being amputated and she challenging death, she dies, and there Diego Rivera appears in the Palacio de Bellas Artes, crying for the first time. This is a hospital scene with a cast, 1950, the ABC, after she was amputated the right leg, and where this famous phrase of, legs, what would I need legs if I have wings to fly? So there is the Fine Arts Palace in Mexico City with the biggest sadness in 1954 because of her departure at those early stages, where she was saying, viva la vida, go on life, and painting still lifes, which is the only thing she could paint at the end and the last days of her life. The Palacio de Bellas Artes. But the question is, for all of us, as I said at the beginning, viva la vida, go on with life. This is before she's dying. She's celebrating life and she's singing. But is she died? Is she dead? The question, why is this character attracting such cues still? This is a national homage in the Fine Arts Palace in 2007, where I had the pleasure and really the joy of working with this woman for 2 months and having more than 500,000 visitors crossing those doors without not a single respite. I thought when we were told to organize this national homage that Frida would not attract people. Why would Mexicans come to see Frida if Frida is always in Mexico? In la Casa Azul, in Museo de Arte Moderno, in Dolores Olmedo Museum, Frida is always there. Would Mexicans come to see a national homage? 500,000 people, as I said, an average of 17,000 people in Sundays, queues for more than 8 hours, were looking and paying respect to her. And this really impressed me so much that I am sharing with you that I've seen the Tate exhibition, I saw the Australia exhibition, the Spain, always the cues. Why is that? Is that the folkloric piece? Is that the pop art? Is that just that I don't have an answer, but I hope you can find it. What I know is that Frida was named the wife of Diego Rivera. And nowadays, Diego Rivera is the husband of Frida. Thank you very much.